Hello, grade 9. I'm just going to talk to you because I'm not there today, and I think it's the end of the play, and I think it's really important that I talk to you about some of the key moments here at the end of the play because I really want you to understand it. And obviously, me not being there today because I'm not very well is not ideal. So I'm just going to talk to you about a few of the things. So, first of all, that we'll see here in this digital version of the text is that we have this joke, all right? And it's not a particularly clever joke. It's a pun. It plays on the word fair. Fair means obviously light coloured, but also it means inappropriate or morally good or whatever. And so it plays around with that. But the real cutting thing here that Hallie does is that he uses racist language. And this limits Sam to a punchline, and the punchline is the colour of his skin. It's incredibly disrespectful and incredibly unfair when Sam's been one of the few people that really cares about Hallie. And as I think you'll see in the end of the play, he's just infinite patience in dealing with Hallie in a way that is quite admirable. Sam shows his intelligence here when he says, um, "You're trying really hard to be ugly, aren't you?" And ugly, we talked about this before, if you remember. Ugly here means something extremely unpleasant, something you don't want to look at, morally ugly as well. And he says you shouldn't have a go at Willie as well because Willie's done nothing wrong, and that's not being fair. And then he says, and I mean just or decent, because he's playing on the joke that was made before. And again, it shows Sam's intelligence that although Sam's not academically intelligent because he's had a limited education, he's very wise. And Hallie should really listen to Sam because there's a lot that he can learn today, and there's a lot that he can learn from Sam. Um, at this point, he then exposes his backside to Hallie, and that's obviously an insult. But also, as well, it's kind of he's showing Hallie like he's trying to shame him. He's trying to show that if you've come down to this level, if this is what we're doing, let's do it. If you want to make jokes about my backside, then have a look at one. All right. And here, when he says Hallie says quietly, Sam, and he looks expectantly at him. I thought when I first read this that Hallie was going to apologize, as if to say it's gone too far. I shouldn't have took it out on you. And it's quite the opposite. He spits in his face. And that's just absolutely shocking, isn't it? It shows absolutely disrespect. It's one of the most disrespectful things you can do, as though he's absolutely nothing. Sam says to him in response, "Yeah, I'll start calling you Master Harold now. You've done it." So, in other words, that they're done. Their relationship is now broken because how far you've gone. You have to remember that Sam, the arrogance of Hallie thinking that it's okay to treat someone like that he feels entitled to do that, when Sam and Willie are, big, strong men. Hallie's a kid. And there's a threat of violence here. Um, and both of the boys, sorry, both of the quote unquote boys, Sam and Willie, they both now stand in front of him as strong men who are angry and probably want to hit him. All right. And we see that here. He said, "Should I hit him, Willie?" He says, "I want to hit him really bad." I think this line is very, very uh, appropriate, and I think it's absolutely spot on. Sam says here, he says, "You've hurt yourself, Master Harold. I saw it coming. I warned you, but you wouldn't listen. You've just hurt yourself bad," because he's ruined a relationship with someone that one of the few people that's actually there for him. And then he gives him a home truth. He says, "You're a coward. The face you should be spitting in is your father's, but you used mine because you think you're safe inside your fair skin." And then he adds to the joke from before. He says, "This time I don't mean just or decent. He means white." So he thinks that he's saying, you're angry at your father, but you're taking it out on me. And we know that. That's absolutely true. Willie says that he wants to hit him really bad, but he wouldn't do it because he'd probably just go back and cry. He says that he's a little boy, Sam, a little white boy. He says he's got long trousers now because they used to wear shorts when they were young children, but he's still a boy. Sam begins to calm down, and then he tells him that he's just made him feel dirtier than he's ever felt in his life. And he says, "How do I wash off you and your father's filth?" And he's bringing his father into it here because that's where he gets a lot of these ideas from. We know that this uh, racist attitudes that he has, that Hallie has, he gets them from his father, and he describes it as his father's filth as well, not just him. And he said, a long time ago, I promised myself I was going to try and do something. And then he tells him the backstory. And this is where we get our twist. All right. So this goes back to the story of the kite. And it says he's got a memory of a little white boy still wearing short trousers and a black man, but they're not flying a kite. And what happens is that his father was drunk inside the Central Hotel bar, and they've phoned home to try and get his father out of there because obviously he's causing a scene and he's collapsed. And so Sam and Hallie have to go and pick him up. And what's amazing is that Hallie has to go into the bar first, even though he's underage, and ask for permission to Sam to go in because of apartheid, because he's not allowed to go into white establishments. They let him in to help pick him up. And we have this image here as well of um, them walking up Main Street. And again, that's going to be very shameful for Hallie. And I think one thing you get from this section of the text is how ashamed Hallie is of his father. And he says, I really felt for him. I felt for that little boy. And Sam felt bad for Hallie because he's grown up in this environment with his father like that. So he's tried to help him. He's tried to make him feel better. He's tried to make him feel proud of himself rather than ashamed. And Hallie admits in great pain, look at the stage direction there, and it says, I love him, Sam. He loves his father, but he's ashamed of him. He's deeply ashamed of him. And that's the central conflict within Hallie, isn't it? That he loves him because he's his father, but everything he represents, all the values, all the beliefs, is alcoholism, um, all of that is a source of great shame for Hallie. And Sam says, I know you do. That's why I tried to stop you from saying these things about him. All right. Because in the future, if you say all these terrible things about your father, you're going to feel ashamed. And now you've just done that to Sam, you're going to feel even more ashamed. So he's saying you're just self destructive, you're hurting yourself. And then he tells him the twist in the story. And the twist in the story is that he never left him on the hill. It's because Hallie was sat on a bench that he couldn't be on because it was a whites only bench. And he then uses this as a metaphor to talk about apartheid ideology. He says, I wanted you to look up to be proud of something of yourself. And certainly with that, when I left you up there on the hill, if you ever do write a short story, there was a twist in our ending. I couldn't sit down there and stay with you because it was a whites only bench. So this is important because we always said that the kite represented togetherness and harmony and hope and rising above the challenges of apartheid and the conflicts of apartheid. But here we see that apartheid even ruined that because Harold was sat there by himself. And then he tells him this, you were too young, too excited to notice, but not anymore. And if you're not careful, Master Harold, and he uses that term there as well, Master Harold, which is quite cutting, you're going to be sitting up there by yourself for a long time to come. There won't be a kite in the sky. So think about what he's warning him. If you don't get rid of your racist attitude, if you don't change your ways, if you don't start to treat people right, if you don't deal with your father and what he's teaching you, and you don't decide to go your own way, you're going to be just like your father. You're going to be alone, and you're going to be sat on this bench, whites only bench, by yourself. You're not going to have love of people around you. And then he walks away. And Willie says, it's bad. It's all bad in here now. And obviously, he's referring to that room. Remember, the room is a microcosm of South Africa. And therefore, he's saying this is all bad. He means like the situation's bad, the environment's bad. And we see that when he talks about you can't fly a kite on a rainy day, this idea that the environment around them is hostile and unpleasant. Um, Sam tells him not to forget the comic books, and Hallie goes and gets the comic books and the brandy, and then goes to leave. And then Sam stops him, and he says, "Stop, Hallie." And he says, "I've got no right to tell you what a man means if I don't behave well like myself, and I'm not doing so well this afternoon." And then I can't believe he does this after everything that Hallie's done to him. He offers that should we try again, and to me, this makes Sam look like a saint. He never gives up on Hallie, even though through the disrespect and everything, he never gives up on him. And Hallie says, "Should we try what?" And Sam says, "Should we try and fly another kite? I suppose it worked once, and this time I need it as much as you." And Hallie says, "It's raining, Sam. You can't fly kites on rainy days, remember." And that's a metaphor, of course, isn't it? It's with all the problems in the world, how can they possibly work together when they're in such a horrible environment that apartheid has created for them? And so he says, "So what do we do? Hope for better weather tomorrow." All right. And again, it's just extending that metaphor, isn't it? That maybe things will change in South Africa. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore, Hallie says in response. It's quite sad. He says, "Are you sure of that, Hallie? Because it would be pretty hopeless if it was true. It would mean nothing has been learnt here this afternoon." And all the time that Sam's been talking to him about education, it's always been about books and authors. But the real thing that Hallie should have learned is from from Sam, from about how to treat people and caring about people and getting over this race thing. And Sam's been trying to teach him that for many years. Then Hallie leaves, so there's no clear ending here. It's what we call an ambiguous ending. There's no clear idea whether things are going to work out all right or they're not. Now, this was written in apartheid. This was written in 1982, and in the middle of apartheid. So, people weren't sure how the future was going to work out. They weren't sure that apartheid was going to end or not. So, I think that it's appropriate and right for God to make this ending ambiguous because it's up to the audience to decide whether or not this is going to be a good ending or it's going to be a negative ending. And then, just as everything's going bad and everything else, they go back to dreaming, and they Willie does a really nice thing. He says, "Oh, screw it. I'm just going to give you a nice song." And so he uses his bus fare, and he says he's going to walk home, and he uses his bus fare to play a song for Sam. And the last image in the hall play is these two men dancing, and it's really interesting to think about this ending because it started with the two men dancing, so it mirrors the opening of the play. And I think for God's saying, asking us whether or not things will just carry on the same. It's cyclical, like the ending is the same as this opening, and therefore it's just going to carry on the same, and nothing's going to really change for Sam and Willie and Hallie. It's just going to carry on the same. Or another way you can look at it is that they're starting to hope and starting to dream, and therefore they've not been broken down by the events of the day, and that there is hope because that's what the dancing represented, a hope for a better world. And so maybe there is hope for a better world. So it's up to you how you interpret the ending. But I think it's obviously quite a sad ending. But it's up to you how you interpret it. And I really like that about the play. All right. And now you can finish off the rest of your tasks.